Welcome everyone to another edition of Turnpike to WrestleMania here on Turnbuckle Trash Talk. I am the officiant Kent, and we are officially on the road to WrestleMania 36 in Tampa, Florida, which we here at Turnbuckle Trash Talk are hoping to be a huge part of. If you haven't seen this segment before, basically we're going to recap Raw and SmackDown. We're going to talk about some news that happened behind the scenes, and on this episode, I am going to detail 10 changes I would like to see in the Superstar Shakeup. So that should be a lot of fun. But let's start things off with a recap of Raw. Raw started off with Seth Rollins coming out to talk about his big win at WrestleMania, how he's going to be a fighting champion. Then he was interrupted by the new WWE champion, Kofi Kingston. They talked about the winner takes all match the women had at WrestleMania, and Kofi officially challenged Seth to a winner-takes-all match in the main event for both championship belts. Sounded like a good idea, but it might not have turned out that way. We'll get back to that in a minute. After that, we saw Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder successfully defend the Raw Tag Team Championships against the Revival in a rematch. Not a big deal. Not a great match. This feud had no build, so it wasn't expected to have that much of a payoff. I'm glad to see Hawkins and Ryder with the titles, but it's just not the treatment the Revival has deserved. After that, Kurt Angle came out to thank everybody, to talk about his retirement match at Mania. Unfortunately, as to be expected, it was interrupted by Baron Corbin, who came out to gloat about his victory. Kurt Angle offered to wish him luck in the future, and then turned it to bad luck and put Corbin in an ankle lock. After that, we saw the way late debut of Lars Sullivan, who came out and pulverized Angle. So Lars is officially back. He got his head right, or whatever the case was there, and he is now part of the main roster officially. After that, we saw Alexa Bliss defeat Bayley in a very underwhelming match. In fact, the theme of Raw and SmackDown this week was pretty much underwhelming. It seems like this is just a let's wrap things up and kind of stall until the Superstar Shakeup next week. And that wasn't exactly very exciting for the fans, exciting for the viewers. It was kind of a letdown of a Raw and SmackDown after Mania. But Bayley was defeated by Alexa Bliss, who is clearly cleared for in-ring action and is probably going to be a big part of the women's division going forward. After that, we saw the new Raw and SmackDown Women's Champion Becky Lynch come out to a huge ovation. She talked about how she has a huge target on her back now, and that was emphasized by the fact that Lacey Evans interrupted her, came down to the ring. They confronted each other, and Lacey threw a sucker punch women's right at Becky, which I thought was kind of funny because Becky pretty much no-sold it for the most part, even though Lacey had been using it as a finishing move on NXT, but it just shows how tough the man is, especially if she sees it coming. After that, we saw Aleister Black and Ricochet defeat Bobby Roode and Chad Gable, who are apparently heels now. That was a change that really didn't get detailed, but Aleister Black and Ricochet still tearing it up on the tag team division, but for how much longer, we will see. After that, Dean Ambrose had his last appearance on Monday Night Raw in what was supposed to be a match against Bobby Lashley that never actually happened. Instead, we just saw Ambrose pretty much just get demolished by Lashley. So if this really is the end of Dean Ambrose's run in WWE, again, the word here is underwhelming. Sami Zayn made his official return to Monday Night Raw. He came out, he said that he was up for a challenge, wanted to fight the guys in the back. Finn Balor answered his challenge, and it became an Intercontinental Championship match, which we saw Finn defeat Zayn in. It was actually a really good match and could be a preview of things to come in the future. Afterwards, Zayn picked up the mic again and proved why he is an amazing heel in my mind in tearing on the crowd, saying he didn't need them, saying that they were the reason that everything was bad in his life, and that he's just going to tell the truth going forward. So I'm excited to see the promos coming from Sami Zayn. I think they could be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with. After that, Elias was supposed to have an uninterrupted performance, and that he said anybody who interrupted him would be a dead man. If that wasn't foreshadowing, the fact that he was interrupted by The Undertaker, who didn't make an appearance at WrestleMania, but clearly is back to set up an appearance in Saudi Arabia at the next show there. So I'm guessing this is all a build to that, but this was actually a very, very good segment, and probably one of the only highlights of Raw, aside from maybe the Becky Lynch promo and maybe the the Sami Zayn promo. So check those two things out if you're going to watch Raw this week, or those three things out. Check them out. Those are pretty much the only things you need to see. After that, we had the main event of Kofi Kingston versus Seth Rollins, with the WWE Championship and the Universal Championship on the line. It started out as a really good match, but they decided to screw the whole thing up by having the Bar come out and interrupt them, which turned the match into a tag team match and basically left Raw on a very sour note. So overall, I thought, again, this Raw was very underwhelming. If you're going to watch anything, watch the Elias Undertaker interaction, watch the Sami Zayn promo, and watch the Becky Lynch promo. But that was Raw. Let's move on over to SmackDown. On SmackDown, the New Day came out to celebrate Kofi. It was a really good moment. It was a great payoff for everything that happened at WrestleMania. But they were also interrupted by the Bar of Cesaro and Sheamus, because they are trying to emphasize the fact that the shakeup is happening next week. These shows were pretty much looking ahead to the future. Look to the shakeup. Anything could happen. Anyone could show up anywhere. The Bar, being SmackDown superstars, having shown up on Raw and now showing up on SmackDown, challenged the New Day to a six-man tag match later in the night with their special guest partner, Drew McIntyre, Raw superstar Drew McIntyre. Again, shakeup, shakeup, shakeup. So that was going to be the main event of the night. After that, we saw another six-man tag match of Ali, Mustafa Ali in my mind forever, Aleister Black and Ricochet defeating Andrade, Rusev, and Shinsuke Nakamura. I'm not sure what the point of this match was other than filler, but it did set up a potential feud for Ali and Randy Orton after the match, when Orton RKO'd Ali out of nowhere after the match was over. Then we saw Samoa Joe come out and make an open challenge saying he could defeat anyone. Again, to emphasize the shakeup, Braun Strowman responded. We didn't actually get a match out of this. We just got kind of a brawl, but it looks like they may be setting up a Braun Strowman-Samoa Joe feud, which actually feeds well into one of my changes I would like to see, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Then we saw the Iconics, the new women's tag team champions, Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, defeat some local enhancement talent known as the Brooklyn Bells. This was pretty much a squash match. They're really trying to emphasize the Iconics as strong tag team champions. However, on a cool note, Paige had been watching the match backstage and said in an interview after the match was over that she had a tag team that she wanted the Iconics to face next week, or this week in that case, on the episode of SmackDown. So I'm really hoping this could be a call-up for the Sky Pirates, but there are a lot of options. I'm really hoping this isn't just going to be Absolution or the Riot Squad or anything like that. I'm really hoping this is a good moment to call up some good talent from NXT. Then we saw Shane come out and basically gloat about defeating The Miz and Mr. Miz at WrestleMania. It looks like this feud isn't over yet. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes on to Saudi Arabia. There was kind of a funny moment where he tormented the ring announcer into announcing him properly after the ring announcer said that he had been getting threats from fans to not call Shane the best in the world. Also, there were some CM Punk chants because best in the world was kind of CM Punk's thing when he was around. But overall, this was a segment you can feel free to skip. The best segment, I think, of the week as a whole followed that, which was a SmackDown Tag Team Championship match. The Usos versus the Hardy Boys. This was an absolutely fantastic match. It's a dream match, one we'd never seen. Brothers versus brothers. Those two teams have not faced off in a tag team match yet. since the Hardys returned to WWE. It was great. We have new tag team champions in Matt and Jeff Hardy who look phenomenal considering their age. They're in great shape. They still move really well. They put on a great match. Up until Lars Sullivan came out after the match was over and basically demolished the Hardy Boys because, again, they really want to push Lars Sullivan about 3 or 4 months too late. Then after that, we saw some deja vu. Becky Lynch came out and gave a version of the exact same promo she gave on Raw again, only to be sucker punched by Lacey Evans at the end of the promo. I don't see why they had to do this twice. They really want to hammer home the fact that that's the next feud for Becky Lynch, but it was just an unnecessary way to do it. They could have taken another step forward in that, but we don't even know if that's going to happen with the shakeup and everything else. It was just kind of a waste of a segment. Becky Lynch is gold. I absolutely love what she's doing, but this was beyond unnecessary. So now I want to talk about the main event. We saw The New Day defeat The Bar in 6-man tag team action. This was a great match, although weirdly during a commercial break, Drew McIntyre just teleported. He vanished from the match. It was a 3-on-3 tag team match, and then Drew just disappeared, not to be seen or heard from again. Now there's talk that he might have been working sick. He may have gotten injured during the match, but something happened that took him away from action. And also it appears that Big E may have been injured during that match, but I'm going to talk about that in the news. Let's get to that right now. So here's some bits and pieces coming out of after WrestleMania and since then. It appears that Sasha Banks and Bayley may not be very happy with the decision that was made at WrestleMania, going so far as to say that Sasha may be trying to quit WWE right now because they lost those tag team titles. This seems like a really crybaby move by Sasha Banks and really causes me to lose a lot of respect for her. It's a new division, I get it. They wanted to have a lengthy reign, but they need to move forward with it. We couldn't have Sasha and Bayley hold those titles forever. The Iconics are clearly high up in the eyes of management, so they were going to get those titles eventually. Personally, I would have loved to have seen Natalya and Beth have a run with those titles, Beth Phoenix. I think that would have been great and a good extra check on the boxes in Beth Phoenix's career. But this is how wrestling works. This happens. Titles change hands. Stories go on. Are you really going to complain with your 6-figure salary and your cushy job and being on TV a lot? These changes happen. They had to have some drama. This was a way to do it. I'm sorry that they lost the titles, but quit crying. Show up to your public appearances, which is in reference to the fact that she no-showed a public appearance for TV after WrestleMania. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Also on Twitter, she's apparently unfollowed WWE and started following AEW. I don't know if this is to make a statement or if this is all just a work, but it's just really, really not favorable in Sasha Banks to be doing that. Batista officially announced his retirement the night, late in the night or early in the morning following WrestleMania. He went out the way he wanted to do it. I'm happy for him. I wasn't really happy about that match as a whole, but he got the send-off he wanted in the way he wanted it, and he deserves that. So good luck to Batista going forward in his amazing movie career. He's got a bunch of movies coming out. He's firmly implanted in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so I think he's going to be okay without wrestling. Road Dogg, Brian James, resigned from his position as co-lead writer of SmackDown. Apparently he'd made some comments that the writing team had been getting tired of Vince McMahon coming in and changing the script for the show so late in the game, right before it went to TV, and that he just needed to free up some of his responsibilities, free up some of his stress. He's not leaving the company, but he is changing his role. And apparently this was already in the making, so I think this was just a let's just do it now instead of waiting for it type deal. But it seems like there's some changes happening as they're heading towards SmackDown. They're changing towards Fox, the deal with Fox. And so I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. As I mentioned earlier, there were some injuries reported this week. Big E tore his meniscus or really messed it up and could be out for 6 to 8 weeks following his match on SmackDown. How that's going to affect Kofi Kingston and his reign or the New Day as a whole going forward, we have yet to see. I hope it doesn't really have any effect, but that's the way these things kind of work from time to time. Also, Nia Jax reported that she's going to need knee surgery following WrestleMania. So it looks like the Nia Tamina team is on hold for right now. I'm absolutely okay with that. I was thrilled that they did not put the belts on those two. So Nia Jax could be on the shelf for a while. Also, Ronda Rousey, broke her hand during the main event of WrestleMania. She posted some video of her getting it checked out by doctors. So if she was already planning on leaving after WrestleMania, this doesn't really have any effect on it. But there has been talks that at WrestleMania 36 we may see Ronda Rousey versus Becky Lynch. So I'm not sure how that's all going to work out. But for now, it has been confirmed Ronda Rousey does have a broken hand. So she will be sidelined one way or another, whether she was planning on it or not. Now, let's get to what I've been looking forward to most on this episode. 10 changes I would like to see made in the upcoming Superstar Shakeup. I'm going to start with people I would like to see drafted to Raw. First, I think it's time for Pete Dunne to have a call-up. He did everything he can do on NXT UK. He was an absolutely phenomenal United Kingdom champion. He even got that brand established. He had a great reign. He had a great ending with Walter. I think it's time for him to get his just due and get called up to the main roster. There's so many great feuds he could have there. And this is what the NXT system is for. It's time to move up when you're ready. And I think Pete Dunne is overdue for a call up. After that, I would like to see Aleister Black officially drafted to Raw alone. I don't want to see him and Ricochet drafted at the same time. I want to see Aleister Black get an official singles run on Raw. They have so much they can do with this character. He's got so much talent, and I think Raw is the best place for him to go. So I'm calling Aleister Black getting drafted to Raw. After that, the Usos. I think the tag team as a whole needs to move on to Raw. I think they've done everything they can do on SmackDown, and I think the Raw tag team division could really use a boost, and I think the Usos are just the ones to do it. I think they're one of the best tag teams running right now, and I think this is their opportunity to lift up the Raw tag team division out of the gutter and really make something out of it. So I'm hoping Jimmy and Jay get drafted to Raw. After that, another NXT UK call-up. I would like to see Rhea Ripley get drafted to Raw. I think she is an absolutely phenomenal talent. She spent a long time in NXT and NXT UK. She was a great NXT UK women's champion. And I think that the women's division on the main roster could also use a boost. And I think Rhea Ripley would be a great addition as a heel, especially with Nia Jax being sidelined, especially with Tamina probably being sidelined because of Nia Jax. I think it would be great to see Rhea Ripley make her debut on the main roster. I think she's ready, and I think she would be a great opponent for Becky Lynch in the future. And my final pick to go up to Raw, or to move over to Raw, is the United States champion Samoa Joe. I saw it starting to bud with a Samoa Joe-Braun Strowman feud. I think this feud needs to happen on Raw. I think we're going to see a champion-for-champion exchange in the shakeup. And I think Samoa Joe could do a lot for the mid-card on Raw. So that's why I'm picking him to move over there. I think we've seen the best feuds he can have on SmackDown for now. I think some fresh feuds on Raw like Roman Reigns, Seth Rollins, Braun Strowman could be really, really good since he's still healthy and he's still moving forward. So those are 5 changes for Raw. Now let's move over to 5 changes for SmackDown Live. There we go. First off, I'd like to see Apollo Crews drafted to SmackDown. Now, I know this seems like an underwhelming choice, but if SmackDown Live is taking a more sports-based perspective, a more sports view heading into this Fox deal, I think Apollo Crews is just the perfect person to move over to SmackDown. I think there's a lot he could do with the style that they wrestle there. I think he could have some great matches with AJ Styles. To list off a whole number of people, I think he's absolutely underutilized on Raw. I think he has been underutilized since his call up, and I think getting shaken up in this could be a good change and could bring him to the forefront. He's an amazing athlete, and I think this is the time to use him. Following that, I would like to see Ricochet drafted to SmackDown. I want to see the tag team of Ricochet and Aleister Black split up. They've done some amazing work together, but they are both quintessential single stars, and they need to be treated as such. Ricochet could have an amazing run on SmackDown. The matches he could have against people like Apollo Crews could be fantastic. So I am picking for Ricochet to go to SmackDown. We had a tag team go to Raw. I want to see another tag team come to SmackDown. I think there is a very strong possibility we could keep the Revival in the WWE if we move them over to SmackDown Live. SmackDown has an amazing tag team division. The New Day, The Bar, the Usos, although they'd be moving in my predictions. I think the Revival could actually have a chance of being featured as a tag team and possibly having a good tag team title reign if they were to move over to SmackDown. So I'm saying if you want to keep the Revival in WWE, move them over to SmackDown Live. We saw Rhea Ripley, in my mind, getting moved to Raw. I would like to see none other than Ember Moon move to SmackDown. I think if you want to revitalize Asuka, if you want to revitalize Ember Moon, put them into a feud again. They had a dynamite feud on NXT. Let's just rehash that feud on the main roster and let those two talents finally get rebuilt, finally get treated the way they should on the main roster, and establish the women's division on SmackDown as a dominant one. And there's even a possibility right there. Asuka and Ember Moon as a tag team could be a great team for those women's tag team titles. So I say take Ember off of Raw, make her a highlight on SmackDown. Don't just throw her in a battle royal after she returns from injury at WrestleMania. Actually make her a star. So Ember Moon to SmackDown Live. And then finally, number 10, I would like to see Finn Balor move to SmackDown. I think there is a prime opportunity here to either have an amazing feud between Finn Balor and AJ Styles, or to possibly have a reunion of the club, including Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Luke Gallows, and Carl Anderson. If you want to keep the club in WWE, this is a great way to do it. Put all those friends together. Bring the Intercontinental title with you. SmackDown is the show for talents like Finn Balor, and I think he could be perfectly utilized there. So that's what I would do. Those are 10 changes I would like to see in the SmackDown shakeup, or the Superstar shakeup, I should say. And I think it could just be really, really good and could make these shows highlights. So anyway, that is the Turnpike to WrestleMania for this week. I am the Officiant Kent. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Check us out on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. I saw some great shows this past weekend, including Evolve. Check those out. NXT results are up there as well. Great way to stay on top of what's happening in the indies in Florida. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And as always, this Turnpike is toll free.